Nicotine raises your heart rate while ordering blood vessels all over your body to constrict. Meanwhile, toxic chemicals get stuck, causing countless tiny wounds all over your body that will turn into scars. Those scars leak proteins that create random blood clots, making your blood vessels even narrower. Constricted and narrow vessels put a lot of stress on your heart muscle that has to work much harder to keep blood flowing. Inside your skin, the chemicals trigger enzymes that break down collagen, the protein that makes your skin elastic and smooth. This creates folds and wrinkles. Your skin ages much quicker and you look older sooner. But maybe the worst thing is what happens to your immune system. All over your body it reacts to tiny wounds and activates, fighting an invisible enemy, damaging healthy cells in the process. While at the same time, the nicotine makes it slow and sluggish. Worse, at fighting actual diseases. We could go on like this, but this is getting old. In a nutshell, every single one of your organs is highly stressed and suffers some kind of permanent damage. Over time, fats get stuck in the scars inside blood vessels, which get narrower and narrower until they start to suffocate your organs. Your overworked heart beats even harder to push blood through the extra resistance, and your blood pressure rises. So hard that fluids seep out of blood vessels into your lungs, which makes breathing even harder. The likelihood of a blood clot blocking a critical passage in the body rises enormously, which can eventually cause a heart attack or a stroke. Almost all smokers eventually get chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So many of your alveoli are irreversibly destroyed that you're always short of breath, never able to breathe freely. Once you have it, it can only get worse, never better again. Finally, there's cancer. You get a sort of double whammy. On the one hand, you flood your whole system, and especially your lungs, with at least 70 highly cancer-causing chemicals. And on the other hand, you paralyze the part of your immune system that kills and prevents cancer. This is why cancer is so likely in smokers. Ultimately, smoking is uniquely dangerous among the things you are legally allowed to do. The average smoker loses 10 years of life, which means that some lose like 5 years and others more like 25. You don't know which one will be you. But it cuts into your health span even more, making a much larger part of your life spent being chronically sick. Oof. So why don't smokers not just stop doing it? Smokers are often seen as unhinged or without discipline, which is unfair. Nicotine is one of the most physically and pathologically addictive substances known to humanity. If you ever start using it, you'll likely struggle with it for the rest of your life. The physical addiction lasts around 3 days, but the psychological addiction is much harder to overcome because you form strong habits and it's connected to many social cues, like hanging out with friends or winding down from work. The perverse thing is that almost everybody who starts smoking as a teenager. The tobacco industry has to target vulnerable brains and get them hooked on the pleasurable effects of nicotine, or it would go away. Today, about 1 billion people will light a cigarette, which is a lot, but at least the trends are looking good. In 2000, 34% of adults were smoking. In 2020, it was only 23%. Still, in 2023, about 8 million people died from it. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are many successful strategies for quitting. We've put links to some in the video description. People who stop smoking by the age of 35 on average don't die earlier than non-smokers. If you're older than that, even quitting late can add years to your life. It's a bit like with climate change. Every bit counts, even if damage has already been done. We're not the morality or health police, you do you. But at least be aware what exactly you're doing and why you're doing it. Most of you watching this don't smoke, so, well, just maybe never try it. Smoking only really solves a temporary problem, but it creates loads of permanent ones. Good thing I never started. But it's not like I never do things I know I shouldn't. Like using sketchy free Wi-Fis or downloading files. Honestly, this habit journal to help you do exactly that. What would happen if we detonated humanity's most powerful nuclear weapon at the deepest point of the ocean? For sure, tsunamis hundreds of meters high would destroy coastal cities, earthquakes would level countries, new volcanoes would bring us nuclear winter. Maybe even Earth could be ripped apart or thrown out of orbit. Well, almost. Currently, Earth's deepest known point is inside the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is a very deep valley right at the edge of two tectonic plates that looks like an upside-down mountain. It reaches a depth of about 11 kilometers, almost 3 times deeper than the dark grave of the Titanic. It's one of the last places on Earth for humans to explore. Pitch black and under 1,000 atmospheres of pressure, it's a relatively pristine environment thanks to the absence of humans. A great place for our nuclear test. We'll use the most powerful nuclear bomb humans have ever exploded, the RDS-220 hydrogen bomb, or Tsar Bomber. Its explosion was so massive that its shockwave traveled around the Earth 3 times, and its mushroom cloud stretched 56 kilometers into the sky. Its shockwave was strong enough to destroy everything in 1,000 square kilometers, its fireball hot enough to burn the rubble. Bombs like this release such an enormous amount of energy at once that they could boil away an entire lake. And if we set off a nuclear bomb in the Mariana Trench, that's exactly what happens. Let's pull the trigger. In the first few microseconds, the nuclear fuel undergoes its chain reaction and explodes with the power of 50 megatons of TNT. A blinding flash of light illuminates the darkness of the trench for the first time in history. The heat of the explosion produces a cavity, a flaming bubble of water vapor, radioactive nuclei, and the remains of very unlucky fish. The bubble grows quickly as it vaporizes the water around it. The pressure of the bubble is immense, plowing outwards as if there's nothing in the way, sending off a shockwave that will be felt by seismic stations and whales around the world. And then, almost as fast as it emerges, it stops. On the surface of the Earth, this fireball bubble would grow to 10 kilometers the second after it's detonated, as the atmosphere barely puts up a fight to hold it back. But the pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is enormous. With 11 kilometers of water overhead, being in the Mariana Trench is like being crushed by a hydraulic press from every direction. Here, a second after the detonation, our bubble is about 1 kilometer across, when, oddly enough, it starts to shrink. The bubble overextends itself, losing pressure as it expands, until the water turns it back, recompressing it. The tug-of-war between the fiery death bubble and water goes back and forth a few times, the bubble shrinking and growing until eventually the bubble loses for good. The pressure around it is too great, and turbulent water begins to chop it up. It becomes something like the underwater equivalent of a mushroom cloud as it disintegrates into many smaller hot and radioactive bubbles drifting upwards. And as our mighty destructive blast rises to the surface, it does basically nothing. Just a small wave and a bubbling plume of radioactive warm water in the Pacific. No tsunami will wash away Japan or California, although boats and whales in the area might have a bad time. The radioactive fallout will be diluted into the Pacific after a few days, although a fair amount of radioactive water and salt makes it to the atmosphere, where it collects and then rains down again. Even if the wind blows the fallout directly towards the Philippines, the worst of it probably happens over the oceans. But clearly, the real danger comes from our explosion-triggering earthquakes and volcanoes, right? Even if we detonated the bomb right in the trench at the exact point where tectonic plates touch, probably not. The explosion would vaporize a part of the sea floor and turn a lot of sand into glass, but most of the energy goes into the water, not seismic waves. Earthquakes are already quite common at tectonic plate boundaries, and earthquakes with as much seismic energy as our bomb happen a few times a year without triggering any sort of apocalypse. But maybe it will affect the Earth's orbit. Since no mass is taken away or added to the Earth, our orbit is completely unaffected. Also, there have been well over 1,000 nuclear tests in the last 70 years, and that didn't change our orbit, so why would this time be different? The strongest forces humanity can unleash unleash are laughable compared to the forces of nature, the planet is too big. It doesn't care. So, what happens to us if we detonate a nuclear weapon really deep in the ocean? Pretty much nothing. Did you know that every bird in our videos has an owner? More than 1,000 people have got their own bird. It helps us explain things, clowns around in the background, or dies a horrible and avoidable death. If you want your own bird too and you want it to appear in one of our videos, you can get it at patreon.com/Kurzgesagt. Patreon is one of the main ways we sustain ourselves, so on top of getting a super nice avatar, you also help us make more and better videos. Humans are apes with small... Over the last decade, milk has become a bit controversial. Some people say it's a necessary and nutritious food, vital for healthy bones. But others say it can cause cancer and lead to an early death. So, who's right? And why are we drinking it anyway? Milk is the basis of every mammal's diet after birth when our digestive systems are immature and small. Basically, it's powerful to kickstart our bodies and help us grow. Milk is rich in fat, vitamins, minerals, and milk sugar, lactose. On top of that, for a while after birth, it also contains antibodies and proteins that protect us from infections and regulate our immune system. But it's a lot of effort for mothers to produce. Eventually, humans stopped drinking mother's milk and transitioned to the diet of their parents. This is how it's been for thousands of years. Until about 11,000 years ago, when our ancestors settled down in the first agricultural communities. Soon, they domesticated the first dairy animals, goats, sheep, and cattle. They found that dairy animals are able to eat useless and abundant stuff and turn it into nutritious and tasty food. This made a huge difference in terms of survival, especially in hard times. So groups...
If this will happen, it's an unbelievable diplomatic blow to Israel. Egypt is the cornerstone of our standing in the Middle East. Egypt started it, and everything we have on top of it, including Jordan and then the Emirates and Morocco, and we have more connections in the Middle East, is coming as a result of what Egypt did 40 years ago. So if Egypt will join now South Africa and in the claim in front of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, it is a real diplomatic punch. Israel will have to take it very seriously, and this is what I'm warning about. I think it's coming now from several directions, and Israel has to look at the world and has to listen to the world, not only to the Israeli public opinion asking now for revenge. We have to look at the overall, at the wider picture of the long-term security of Israel, not only on the next few weeks in Gaza.
Do your past, present, and future all exist right now? Are you watching this video, being born, and lying on your deathbed at this very moment? Surprisingly, the answer could be yes. But how can that be? What does that even mean? How does time work? The block universe. Imagine the universe like a child painting pictures on paper. Each picture shows everything that's happening in the universe in a single moment. With each new moment, all kinds of things occur everywhere. People are born and die, galactic civilizations expand, you miss the bus, and our universe kid makes a new picture that replaces the old one. In this way, you get something like a movie. Only the moment we're in right now is real. The past is what happened before. Now it's gone. The future is still to come and hasn't been drawn yet. This is kind of how time feels, right? Each moment being replaced by the next one. The past is far behind us, the future doesn't exist. But what if time is something else? What if the universe kid has already finished all its drawings and stacks them on top of each other? This way, we get a block of time that contains the whole history of the universe, all moments that have ever existed or will ever exist. But in this block, in this stack of moments, the past, the present, and the future are equally real and exist at the same time. This feels wrong. The only things that we perceive as real are those things happening now. How can the past and future be real right now? The problem is that according to the theory of relativity, they kind of have to be. Heavily simplified, relativity says that time and space are not separated, but one connected space-time. When you move through space, you're also moving through the block. This means time passes differently for different people, depending on how they move through space relative to each other. And this also means that what someone perceives as now is a certain cut along the block, a cut that will depend on how fast they're moving. So what you think is now is really only your now. There are many different nows in the universe, and all of them are equally real. This also means there's no universal past or future. Okay, this is a lot. How does this work? Imagine 3 alien spaceships a million light years away. The first one just hovers in space, not moving relative to you. You both experience the same now, the same present. If you had a magical, instantaneous internet connection, you could do a video call right now and chat about alien things. The second spaceship is flying away from us at 30 kilometers a second, about 3 times faster than a human rocket. It's moving differently through the block of time than you are, which means its now is different from yours. With the magical internet, the aliens can talk to your ancestors in 1924, when humanity was discovering the first galaxies outside the Milky Way. The third spaceship wants to visit Earth and is flying towards us at 30 kilometers a second, moving at the opposite angle of the second internet, the aliens can talk to your descendants in the year 2124, when humanity has already built cities on Mars and Venus. Okay, so we have 3 different nows. So which one is correct? Well, that's the problem. Relativity is based on one powerful principle: cosmic democracy. The fact that the point of view of all observers in the universe is equally valid. All those nows have to be equally real. But if this is the case, your past, present, and your future all have to exist at the same time, right now. Because for the different aliens, they all happen in their present. This means that the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is an illusion. The universe is not a bunch of things evolving through time like in a movie, but a static block in which the past, the present, and the future all coexist and are real. How can that be? Well, think about a galaxy outside the observable universe, too far away to ever visit or see. But even if you can't get there and don't see it, it's still real. The future might be the same, but if the past is not far behind us and the future actually exists, then there is no movie. Things don't happen in the universe. The universe just is, like a frozen block of dead cosmic ice, with everything that will ever happen already written and decided. Is the future already written? If all times coexist and are equally real, then the future has to be already written. But that's not how you experience things. It feels like you can mold your future with your decisions. It really feels like you're free to choose to stop watching YouTube to not miss the bus. But if the future is set in stone, you can't decide anything. So are your choices an illusion? Well, maybe. Maybe your free will is a mirage. And maybe you missing the bus was already predetermined at the Big Bang. So feel free to continue watching. Except quantum stuff is ruining everything again. Quantum processes can't be predicted, not even in principle. Not because we're silly and don't know how to do it. According to quantum physics, quantum particles are intrinsically random. For example, if you have a radioactive atom, it could decay at any moment, in the next second or in the next million years. We can calculate the probability that it will decay tomorrow, but no oracle in the universe will ever be able to tell you with absolute certainty if it will do so or not. But quantum particles can change the world. Imagine a radioactive element randomly decays and causes a genetic mutation in a nearby mammal. And then many generations later, that mutation has led to a weird mix of duck and mammal that makes no sense. Or the atom decays a day later, and the weird creature will never exist. If quantum stuff is really uncertain, the future can't be set in stone. But if the future is an untold story, it can't be real in the same way as the past is. So what happens when uncertain things like the decay of our atom become real? Is that moment the present? Is this now? But before we saw that cosmic democracy makes it impossible to define an absolute now. What's going on here? It turns out that for every individual object, you, an alien, an atom, the past, the present, and the future are always well defined. Your death will always happen after your birth, never before, and never at the same time. Now, you are clearly between your birth and your death. So, for you at least, now makes perfect sense. If we don't play tricks like going to the other side of the universe and using aliens in funny ways to find out what now means, things again start to look ordered and nice, and individual nows seem to exist. Can we do something with them? Let's return to our block universe. Maybe the block does not contain the future, and maybe we just imagined it wrong. Maybe the block is just the past, and a thin layer on the surface is the present. That surface is not smooth, but bumpy and uneven. It's been made by joining countless individual nows, each experienced by someone or something in the universe, each equally real and valid, and all observers do their bit, so cosmic democracy is still true. As new things happen and uncertain things become certain, radioactive atoms decay, new species of mammals arise, people miss the bus, the border moves upwards, creating new time in the universe. Instead of a frozen block of time with a future that has already been written, the block is growing and things happen. you can again decide your future. Maybe leave earlier so you won't miss the bus. What is real then? Let's recap. We started with time as a movie, one now after another, where only the current now was real. Then we found out that because of relativity, there are multiple nows, all of them real somehow, which could mean that we're living in a frozen block universe where things don't happen and you don't really have free will. And we ended up with a kind of growing block universe where time passes and the future is open. So, which is correct? What is real? The present? The past? Are the dinosaurs as real as you are right now? What do the aliens on the other corner of the universe think about all this? To be honest, no one knows. What we've learned are two possibilities to describe time, but they're not the only ones. Some scientists think that the idea of now only makes sense near you, but not in the universe as a whole. Others think that time itself doesn't even exist, that the whole concept is an illusion of our human mind. And others think that time does exist, but that it's not a fundamental feature of the universe. Rather, time may be something that emerges from a deeper level of reality, just like heat emerges from the motion of individual molecules, or life emerges from the interactions of lifeless proteins. We could go on, but aren't you about to miss the bus? The concept of time is abstract and elusive, possibly beyond complete human comprehension. For